Welcome to the High Pass Podcast. This is Dereck Blackburn, your host, and this week I have Mann from Distorted Forest Studio in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. Jared, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So I just wanted to start off by asking, how did you get started? How did you get started as a musician and then eventually a recording engineer? Where did it all kind of come from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say it came a lot from my brother just because he was about 9.5 years older than me, and he kind of exposed me to skateboarding and then music kind of around the same time. And there was enough of a gap in our age that I kind of got to download and sponge, I think, a lot of like the stuff he was discovering for the first time. And a lot of it was good, honestly. It was good music, and skateboarding was something that I was obsessed with, and the culture that came with that, and music was, and especially punk music and hardcore were like super entwined in that. And skateboarding is also super creative too. So I felt like I really fell in love with the idea of those two things kind of meshing. And we had enough of a gap too that when he kind of got into music, I was at a pretty young age. So, I was probably about 10 or so. And all of a sudden there was like guitars kind of lying around and drums. And then when he kind of got his first job, he got like a Motu interface and kind of delved into recording. And he met David Bazan at a show one time, and he told him about tape op. And then I kind of have been reading tape op for like a ridiculous amount of time. It's kind of strange, but that creative elements that were always around me, and then kind of having the gear around me at a young age when it just became like a fun hobby or outlet, just like, playing baseball or doing anything. And spending time in the basement, kind of like making my own songs, and that kind of developed into having my own band. And then eventually that kind of snowballed into just like making records, not only for my band, but then my friends. And then that kind of kept snowballing into eventually live sound and some film stuff. But eventually it all kind of circled back until I was mainly just doing, making records and recording.
Oh, that's cool. So you didn't really have like a formal education in music before you started getting into the band stuff?
No, I think the only thing I ever really did was I was a drummer first, and I did take some drum lessons very briefly. Like I did take a drum lesson in Woonsocket, if anybody's familiar, that's from the area. It was Al Drews, and had the old guy, and he was just like a left, right, like was like the first day, like on a snare drum. And I was like, fuck this, man, I can't do this. But then I went to another kind of spot, Larry B's, which is close by, and kind of did drum lessons there. And we kind of would end up just like talking about music and never really playing.
Yeah, I had a guitar teacher back in the day who would teach me anything I wanted to learn. I would just bring songs in, and he would teach them to me by ear. It's Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Braid, just anything at all. He would be like, this is how you figure it out.
I wasn't really into doing covers and stuff too, or like, I had friends that were in the jazz band. It was cool. I thought it was cool, but everyone was always like doing covers and stuff. And I really just wanted to like make my own music and make original songs and stuff like that. No formal education. I was actually a film student, and I still can't read music. I do everything by ear. It's always been that way.
Yeah. So would you consider drums to be like your primary instrument?
I would say I'm probably the best at drums, though I play guitar in a band now, and I would say that's my main instrument. I certainly still love drums, but I feel like, playing guitar is a little easier to write a song and sit down and be creative with it than just jump behind a drum set. I've certainly written songs all from drums, but I think now I'm just kind of drawn more towards songwriting and stuff.
Yeah. So when you were first trying to write songs, were you like, did you have any influences? Was there anything that you were trying to emulate, or were you just like, I'm just going to make some noise and see what happens?
It was a little bit of both. I think like I definitely was pretty bad for a while. I made a lot of bad noise for my parents had to deal with and whatnot. But some drummers I definitely were drawn to, like out of the gate, like Jeremiah Green from Modest Mouse was like a really creative, cool drummer. I heard him at like a pretty young age, and I thought that was, just like really inspiring. Or like Mike Kinsella from Captain Jazz. Like I really liked the drums in that. Fugazi, Brendan Candy, like those guys definitely very creative, like non-traditional in a lot of ways, and relied a lot on like the groove and like their own sense of the word, like groove, and kind of like using other parts of the drum set, like the bell on the ride, or like using the toms a lot and kind of forming the songs around different elements of the drum set.
Yeah. So when you were coming up back then, were there a lot of places to play? Like, did you guys do parish halls or VFWs or a lot of DIY house shows, things like that? What was that whole experience like for you?
We kind of had all of that. I think the first show I ever played was either the talent show at my high school, or I think that was the first show I ever played. And then right after that, like a friend of ours had like a show in like his garage at his parents' house. And that was kind of like my first couple shows ever. The talent show was always a big thing because like anyone that like in the school that like played music and wanted to showcase their songwriting, we got to do that there. And that was fun.
The one thing that I love about talent shows at that age is that you don't realize how many other people are kind of into the thing that you're into. You know, like you meet other kids who are playing guitar or bass or drums, or they just, they're involved in these things. And you're just like, oh, I thought I was the only one. And it ends up that they're
I think that was cool and also intimidating for me because I was like, in my room making songs like, oh shit, like other people can do this too.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, yeah, then we had like VFW halls, and my band, we kind of would play anywhere. Like, we would play at like some of the worst shows ever. Just like really, my first band played with a lot of hardcore bands, even though we weren't really like that. There was just a lot of that. And we'd play at other schools. We played like a snowball dance. We played in a town hall. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah, real character building shows here, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me, how did you get into audio engineering? What compelled you to start recording other people other than yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really was just kind of like I had to do it because I wanted to make a record with my friends. And I think that first experience of making that, like the first band I was ever, well, like the first like band where we were like trying to do stuff, I guess, was this band called Big Tall Buildings. And it was a bunch of friends from high school from North Smithfield. And it was like 8 of us at one point. And we would get together and I'd kind of like lead the orchestra in a way and kind of like assemble everybody and kind of like try to put the songs together. And I would write lyrics, but someone else would sing them and I would kind of write the songs, but people would all contribute. I really wanted to, make a record, and my brother had the stuff, and I was always making demos, but I had no idea what I was doing as far as the actual engineering part of it, or, the ideas of phase or any like level of the actual science behind any of it. But there was just the will to do it and to get it done, and, just to give it everything I had and what my friends had. And I remember so little about like how I made those records. I just remember like little snippets of just like doing it, And
Yeah.
I think when you kind of have the energy and the will to do it, even if you don't know what you're doing, you can still get decent results.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way about this podcast. I think that I've edited many podcasts over the last 10 to 15 years, and I really have never produced a podcast. And I just thought, I know all of the elements that go into one. Why don't I just do it? And, it's gotten me it gave me a lot of confidence, I would say. So do you remember the first record that you made?
I think the first record I did, I mixed it all on headphones, but like I listen to it now and I'm like, it's like kind of lo-fi, but the songs are still there and the energy still comes through. And that was really interesting to me, and real like a creative moment where I was like, oh, I can do this, and it can be fun and it can be creative. As I learned more, I got better, but I think that initial kind of idea like really stuck with me, and it's kind of why I still make records and why it's still fun and whatnot.
Yeah, you said that your brother was a pretty big influence on you as far as like kind of having all of the equipment and everything, and was kind of dabbling in this world and whatnot. But did you have any other mentors or people you looked up to in a way when you were starting your journey?
Yeah, I think as I got older, I started to kind of look at the liner notes and stuff like that. And then obviously reading Tape Op, I was like, intrigued by how they made the Modest Mouse records, or like I loved Jawbreaker, Jets Brazil, and like Jay Robbins. Learning about him, and I really liked the sounds on those records. And I had kind of realized I really like the sound of 2-inch tape, even though I never really had access to that. I never had a mentor. I never interned at a studio. I never really or went to school for audio. So I've done everything just by kind of hard knocks, just like learning and reading and, making a lot of mistakes and whatnot. There's a lot of like certain records that have been influential to me, certain sounds. Definitely the first Yes Brazil record, Orange Rhyming Dictionary. Not so much for like the sounds, I guess, on that one, just the songs themselves, and kind of like that was just a really important record to me that kind of like pushed me to like be creative in my songwriting and whatnot. And then I would say like Pinkerton by Weezer, like I loved the drum sound on that. And that was like kind of like opened my eyes to like distortion and just these other elements that I didn't hear on the radio, or like kind of the clean production. It was gritty and it was like cool. Or eventually like Sparkle Horse, still love all those records and his use of mixing really hi-fi with really lo-fi. And that's something that I still like, I think is so awesome. Just using these crappy little microphones or tape machines around and kind of mixing that with like really good sounding drums or guitars. And when I first heard that band, I was like, this guy's doing everything I've ever wanted to do in recording, you know what I mean? And, you know, a lot of like lo-fi records too, like we mentioned Pedro the Lion, his first record, it sounded very intimate and close, like recorded at home. And, I was like, oh, you know, you can do this at home and it doesn't need to be in a commercial studio. It can be just in your bedroom or wherever. Like early Elliott Smith, all this recorded with 4-track and an SM57, or even Sufjan, like some of his first records sound crazy. It mixed on headphones used with crappy equipment, recorded at even bad bit depth. Like it's crazy, you know what I mean? Like that, the idea of just like doing it and like finding a way, the songs will come through. And I think that's, you know, something I've stuck with.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of the bands that you mentioned in themselves are masterclasses in recording. Home recording in non-traditional spaces, you know, that happens way more than people realize. I think that's really notable, especially since all of these bands have incredible songwriters and are known for their incredible songs, not just their great recordings. And I think that it's interesting that you seem very attached to that song first perspective. And I wonder if that kind of spills over into your engineering. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, about your engineering philosophy? Tell us about Distorted Forest Studio and what you do there.
So this space, I'd gone through a few different iterations of spaces and whatnot. And at one time, I was kind of just mobile and recording kind of wherever I could. And it had started in my basement. It had like a kind of a different name, but it started there. And that's kind of where I made my first records. And it was a very small corner of my parents' basement. And then eventually when I moved to Providence, I kind of had like a loft space where I would record it. It actually sounded pretty good. And I made a couple records there. And then I was kind of like looking around for a place to do it. And it seemed like at the time, kind of just like getting out of college, that it was going to be pretty hard to afford doing something like that. And I was still in bands and whatnot. And I really just wanted a space where I could work on projects for my band and record and maybe like do some side work with friends and whatnot. And my dad had a barn where I grew up. There's about 30 acres of land that was originally my grandparents' has kind of just been handed down through my family. And there was a floor upstairs. There wasn't really any rooms or stairs even. It was just like a subfloor. And he was like, you know, if you want to build it out up there, you could do it there. So he helped me. And I was working at a venue at the time. So I was doing sound, like I was pretty much full-time doing live sound. So I was able to kind of jump back and forth. And it was kind of an exciting time to do all that. Yeah, he helped me. Anything I didn't know, he had built a lot of my parents' house originally. So he was pretty handy. And I built the rooms out, built a control room and a small live room. And I recorded a lot of bands just up there, up in that smaller space for a long time. And then during COVID, I expanded it to, there was like the downstairs. My father basically had passed away, but my family was like, you know, you can do what you want with the space. You know, it was just going to basically sit there. So during COVID, I redid like 3/4 of the downstairs up until a certain point and redid the walls. And luckily it was like 12-foot ceilings and I rewired the whole place. You know, the whole project has been a big one, but it's been gratifying because it continues to get bigger and bigger and, you know, continues to sound better. And after I did the big downstairs live room, I kind of made it more dead upstairs and made more of like a dead room. And I have a couple little isolation closets and whatnot. But it's a cool space because it's not like a commercial studio. It's like kind of like recording at home and it's comfortable, but the whole building is kind of wired for sound. And I can get pretty big sounds and pretty dead sounds and isolated sounds, but also record stuff pretty live. There's definitely a little bit of bleed, but I don't really have to worry about sound getting in so much or sound getting out because it's in the woods. So it's a cool creative place that's not like a lot of other places, I think. I mean, it's definitely in the woods and it's, you know, like 20 minutes outside the city. It's not too bad, but you come out here, it's a different environment. I think it's a good creative space to kind of get away, but also have some sonic options, you know?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pictures of it online. It looks like a really cool space. So in terms of where you're located in this building, your control room is on the top floor?
Yeah. So it's very, a couple of people that recorded a long time ago, Steve Albini said it's kind of like his original space in a way because it's upstairs. So the control room's upstairs and the dead room is upstairs. So it was kind of that was the original space, and then it expanded to downstairs. So the main live room now really is downstairs, and I'm upstairs most of the time. But I can't. I have like a TV that has like a camera, so I can see. That's been a huge help. So it's kind of set up like that. But I have the upstairs live room patched, and then the downstairs live room patched. So I can even record both rooms at the same time. But these days it seems like for stuff I'm doing, like the new live room ended up sounding really good with minimal, honestly, like almost no treatment. It was kind of crazy. I thought I was going to have to like do a lot to it. And there's still a couple things I could probably improve on, but I mean, the drums sound great down there. Bleed sounds great down there. I've been really lucky with that because I certainly can build all that stuff, but I get very bored by doing it, like building panels and stuff.
Yeah. So how does being in this space shape your recording philosophy?
The way I operate is I love to record stuff live. Like I certainly can do stuff with a click, or we can, start with drums and build from there. But I really try to capture everything live with isolated amps and, DIs or whatever, and try to capture the moment and like the people communicating in real time when they're playing their songs. Because I feel like, it's just so much more relaxed and it's more fun for the bands. They leave happier, and it's just like them playing in their practice space. And I'm sure he's probably even said that before, but like I feel like the idea of that is just something that it's probably like 95% of how I record bands. You're able to capture something so much more special than just, building things from the ground up is great for fidelity and space or whatever you want to say, but like you're able to capture something special. It's much more meaningful, and you walk away with this great memory and this experience versus just kind of like, it's always going to be work too, but I feel like it stands out a little bit more.
Yeah. So speaking of which, can you think of any memorable moments that kind of encapsulates what working at Distorted Forest and working with you is like?
Yeah. It's funny because I have a awful memory. Like I have a really bad memory, like just in general, like a lot of things blur over for me. And I definitely remember some things, but I don't have the best memory. But I would say it's more like people are just like giving it their all. And I'm so glad the tape is running, so to speak, right now. And we're capturing this moment, or even when bands like kind of don't have it, then all of a sudden something will change. And then it's like they snap in and it's like night and day. Like just being able to sit there and, contribute in my small way and capture it, it always feels special. For me, like growing up and recording now, I got to record Peter Prescott of Mission of Burma, and that they were always a big influence for me, and a band that was a very ahead of its time, in my opinion. I got to know Pete through doing live sound when I did that for years at this place called Aurora. It just felt like a really like organic thing where, I mixed his band a bunch of times, and he's like, oh yeah, we should just like, you're running a studio, we should go record. And I feel like that mentality carried over with so many other people, and just keeping it about the human side of things and the relationship you build with them. And he's quite a bit older than me, but he still embodies like this punk mentality that I think is so important. And with music, just to like collaborate with people and just like do it because we love doing it. And that was a special moment for me, just because I think, if I were to be 16 or something like that and think about that, I wouldn't think something like that would be possible. But being older, I'm like, music is such a powerful, beautiful thing and opens so many cool doors and allows you to collaborate in ways you wouldn't have thought possible.
Yeah. That sounds like a definite milestone for you in your career. And I'm wondering, that kind of goes into this next question that I have, which is, what do you think the future is like for your recording studio and for you yourself as an engineer? Where do you see, the service that you provide going like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. I really just like making music with anyone, like I feel like I don't really turn people away that want to make records with me. And I feel like I like representing the local community. And a lot of the times I work with people with bands that a lot of people have never heard of. And, I've been in so many bands like that too. I love so many records I've made here that a lot of people probably haven't heard at all. You know what I mean? But it doesn't make them any less special. Doing that and bringing that every day and just trying to like capture and bring the best out of people's performances and really capture those performances the world needs those things. My friend Scott, who's a mastering engineer, like had said to me recently, because I was dealing with some issue and I was just like frustrated with it. But he's like, people need people like you, like that are doing what you're doing. Like the world would be less interesting, basically. And I think I try to take that away every day. That like what we're doing as audio engineers, like it isn't some like amazingly honorable thing or something like that, but it is difficult sometimes, and it can be hard, and it can be stressful, and it can be trying at times. But I think it is important, and adding something that to society and trying to add some other element to my area, like to reference like some bands like I loved, like Fugazi, for instance. Like they represent the music from their community, like Discord. Like it's all about that. And they didn't move to LA and just do it in LA just because LA was the place to be. They stayed where they were, and they tried to make the place they were from special. And I think I definitely had moments where I was like, oh, I could leave and go do it there. There's probably some opportunities, but I've always come back here because special place to me, but also like I want good music to come out of my home state and the area I grew up in, and make that something special and something that other people might be drawn to or collaborate with or something.
Yeah, I definitely understand and respect that quite a bit, because I also feel sort of like I didn't really choose this line of work. It chose me. And I know that's a very like, it's just like, okay, whatever. But it's definitely something I'd have a hard time not doing.
It'd be hard for me to not.
Yeah. I mean, I came from a small town that had like 2 or 3 studios in it. And the people who were running those studios were doing it because they loved the music and they loved musicians, and they did serve the community. And I can't help but think now that they were the model for me
Totally
to do what I do here. The other thing I always think of is they were supporting my aspirations, like not only as a musician, but eventually as an audio engineer. And that's what I'm doing now, is I'm supporting people's aspirations who come here, because, you and I have been doing this long enough to have seen people be successful. People who kind of like were very aspirational, but eventually really made something significant of their art. I think you and I have a lot in common that way. We both see ourselves as people who support our local communities.
I think it's important. It can get lost. If everybody went to the bigger cities, New York or LA or something like that, like these random bands from, these random places wouldn't pop up and make what our scenes or whatever, or, special. And I think it's really important.
Yeah. And I think that another thing that kind of gets lost is sometimes people don't understand the depth of experience that people like us have in these community roles. Like we've recorded hundreds of bands, and maybe we've been in bands, or we've been on tours, or we've managed tours, or we've managed bands. And I think that what I'm trying to say is we can be resources. But the way of audio engineering is there's always something to learn. I never like claim to know everything there is to know, but definitely like it's just a never ending journey of learning.
Yeah, a lot goes into it. And I mean, the cool thing about, I think, engineering is that there's always so much to learn, and there's always new things to get creative about or try, and, or like making a mix. It's like, it can be a fun puzzle, or it could be something totally different that you've never done before, or, or it could be something you've done a bunch of times, but, you've done it enough that the right equation to get things done. It's just like, it can be endless to me. And that's what's really exciting and fun about it. Like it always kind of keeps my brain working,
Yeah, for sure. So how do people find you if they want to work with you?
I would say most of it is just word of mouth. Like it's usually if somebody's made a record with me, then they'll tell a friend, or hopefully if they had a good experience, that word will spread, whether it's in the scene or it's just through talking and going to shows or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm easily reachable. Through email or through my website or through some social media, I suppose. But I'm a very nice person, so feel free to reach out if anyone is interested.
Yeah. So your Instagram is at Distorted Forest Studio, and your website is distortedforeststudio.com.
Yep, I try to make it as simple as.
So is there anything that you're working on currently or anything that's coming up in the future that you want to tell people about?
Yeah, I'm working on a bunch of records right now, and then also my own music too. So it's been a fun summer so far. It's been pretty productive and it's been creative. I'm trying to, and I've actually had a freelance engineer in here for the first time, really running the ship for a few dates that I wasn't here, which has been really cool and different, but also exciting. So I've been working on a few different projects lately. I've been doing this record called Slimo for this band from Providence. They're like kind of like a hardcore band, but kind of sludgy. But all the lyrics are Jabba the Hutt's language, and all the lyrics are in that. And it's so cool, and it sounds silly, but it's like not. It like totally works. So I've been finishing the mix on that. That's going to get mastered soon. That's an example of something like just like totally different, but like at the same time totally awesome. And then I've been doing a bunch with this band Bill they're from Worcester. They've been around for quite a long time. I want to say maybe even longer than 30 years. This guy John Gage is kind of like the main guy in it, but the band is fronted by might be his older brother, maybe it's his younger brother, but they're pretty close in age. But he has Down syndrome, but he leads this punk band, and it's the most amazing thing to witness. It's very inspiring, and it's just been a really cool project to just, another example of just like music bringing people together in a really cool way. And I never had the experience of working on a project like that. And the tunes are great, and the energy that Bill, the band is named after Bill, his brother too, he brings to the songs is just like pretty amazing to see that happen in real time. I've been doing a lot with this. I have a friend of mine, Ben Quinn. He has a band that's been in here, then doing his solo stuff, and he rips on the piano. And I've got an upright piano a couple of years ago, and he's really been the one to like really dig into it and like make the thing work. And it's just been really satisfying to hear a lot of piano tunes come out of it. And we've had a lot of fun like being creative with those recordings and just doing something a little different. Like his songwriting is a little different than some of the stuff that comes in here, but I absolutely love it. And then the band Fine from Providence, they've been around for a while. We just finished tracking that record, and we're going to be mixing it soon. And we've been working on that for over a year now. So I'm really excited for that to be finishing up. And then one more band, Mallard from Worcester. He had come in with the band originally, kind of more punk oriented, but now he's kind of just like doing a solo thing where he's kind of playing a lot on it. And he's a great drummer. I had no idea he could play drums so well. And we've kind of been building that up kind of like a solo record. But then he kind of had one song that he was like, I'm not sure what to do on the drums. And I was just downstairs heating up food, and I jumped on the drum set, and then we just hit record, and we're able to like capture like this 10-minute song, and we kind of edited it down, something a little more precise. But that was just like a really cool moment. And I hadn't really played drums on something in a minute. So that was really fun for me. But yeah, it's just been a lot of different projects. And I think that's kind of the name of the game here. Certain bands might come here, some more heavier bands or more punk oriented bands or indie bands, but it doesn't mean I don't want to work on other stuff. And lately it's been a little more of a mix, and that's been really fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, what a great testament to the quality of work that you're doing there at Distorted Forest. All of these bands coming to work with you and work in your space. I'm absolutely positive it's because of your ethic and your dedication to them and their artistry. I wanted to express my gratitude to you for being on the show today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your presence here.
Yeah, man. Let's definitely maybe grab a coffee if I'm ever up your way or down here sometime. I'd love to do that.
Count on it. One more thing. That was pretty good, right? That like one more thing. Saying it like it's a real podcast. I mean, it is a real podcast. I'm just kidding and being silly. But I'm not kidding about my gratitude to you, the listener, whoever you are. If this is your first episode or your 6th episode, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the support of the community, the words of encouragement that I've gotten, the feedback that I've gotten as well. I take all the feedback, and I'm trying to make this the best that it can be within, my time constraints and everything. And I'm just really elated with the positive feedback that I've received. And I just wanted to say thank you. That's all. See you next week.